Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast created to look deep into what it means to be a runner and endurance athlete. Our episodes are filled with real stories from real runners, elite to the everyday athlete. We bring together healthcare providers, athletes, and dive deep into topics that matter most to runners. I'm Dr. Kate Mihevik-Edwards, physical therapist, author, athlete, and complete coffee addict.
And I'm Dr. Kacy Sinders, physical therapist, athlete, and pun expert extraordinaire. We are so passionate about changing running culture to improve the health, wellness, and fulfillment of our endurance athlete community. And we hope that these conversations inspire you to focus on putting your health first so that performance and PRs can follow. Now let's get to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to More Than Miles. Kate and Kacy here with another hard, hot-hitting episode. We are excited to recap some of our experience. We were in Boston for the Female Athlete Conference. What is time? 2 weeks ago?
I think it was 2 weeks. That sounds about right.
2 weeks ago. And it was exciting, filled 3 days with a lot of really amazing practitioners, mostly female, which we love. But we just wanted to tell you guys about our experience, things that we took away from it, how it's going to inform our practice, and most importantly, what we think still needs to be done.
Yeah. Thanks, Kacy, for that little intro. We were talking about the conference because there are a couple of really interesting things about it. One, it comes together every 2 years, and it really looks at what's happening for the female athlete research, what's new, who's doing it. It's really interdisciplinary. So it's a great conference in that there are PTs there are coaches there, MDs, people from all over the spectrum, dietitians. So it's really nice from that kind of interdisciplinary care and multidisciplinary care that we keep talking about. So that was great. And then, of course, the energy in the room was really, really cool. Just to be with a whole bunch of women and some men who really believed in looking into the differences between female and male athletes and how we could really help kind of fill that gap where female athletes have been left behind in the dust for so long. So it was really exciting. And on top of it, we closed the office. So all of the precision PTs were there. And also we had Sarah Reiser and Kelsey Pontius, two of our people that we love and collaborate with a lot, that were with us. So it was all around pretty great.
Yeah, just a big nerd party.
It was a big.
I think, I took away a lot of information and knowledge and ideas from the actual presentations, but I think the energy was worth it in itself. We have a lot against us right now as women and as females, and to see all of these people who are still fighting the good fight and putting in the work and making sure that we're taken care of in the healthcare space. I kept calling it the Feisty Female Conference all week. That's what it felt like. And it felt like a good place to be right now.
Yeah, for sure. And just so that people have a general idea of kind of I don't remember how many people were there. I didn't really get a number, and I'm so bad at saying like, oh, there's 500, 1,000, or 2,000. I have no idea. There were a lot of people, and we're in a big ballroom, and it felt really great. But what was great is they had multiple talks. They had researchers talking about research that is currently being done, as well as research that has recently been done regarding female athletes. So they had researchers talking about training with your cycle and performance and perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. They had people talking about how females endurance and the different markers that we're looking at. So it really talked about female athletes from the entire spectrum, from adolescence to postmenopause. And that was what was really cool, is because we know that it takes, 17 at most, or around 17 years for research to come into practice, generally speaking. But I think it's starting to speed up because of conferences like this, because of social media, things like that. But it's great to hear it right out of the gate so that we can start thinking about it, implementing it, or at least changing our mindset when it comes to patient care.
Yeah, I have the little hormone graph along the menstrual cycle memorized and burned into my brain, but there was a slide with it on there in every single presentation I went to. And I think, I took a lot of things away, and I'm excited to hear like what your big takeaways were. But I think all these things are so individual, right? And this is why females have been excluded from the literature because of how variable our physiology is throughout the month, right? And even, we say, okay, this is what happens throughout the month, but that's not how it is for everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's so much variation. And so I think obviously the more we research on it, the more we'll be able to hone in on that variation and apply this to women in their medical care. But I think the most important thing I took away was this is highly individual, and we need to give our women patients, our female patients, the power to understand that and be able to see and read their own bodies and their own variations, because not not everyone's going to be textbook.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for us who want to be like, if this, then that. But I think it's just important for us to understand as much as we can so that we can help people individually, because it's just not textbook.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if we're really just talking about the menstrual cycle for a minute, that's something that I lecture on quite often, is training with your menstrual cycle, or how do you frame that? And what was really good in terms of this conference is saying like, okay, some people think this, some people think this. There's research that conflicts about what to do. But like you said, it's very individualized. But what I think about, and what I think about in terms of how are we going to apply that to our athletes, I think, okay, so it's all individualized. So what we need to learn first is, how does each individual athlete feel during the days of the month? So that whole idea of tracking, and it doesn't have to be digital, and we've talked about this before, but they can track it however they want to track it, but tracking how they feel in their body. What is their performance? What is their fatigue like? Are they having any cravings? What's their mood like? All of those things. If our athletes can track that, even if it's just for them, they can start to get a good picture of how their body behaves in a cyclical way. And then there are techniques and things that we know that help with certain symptoms, right? So whether we're talking about bloating or we're talking about overheating, like core body temperature increasing because of the changes of our changes in our hormones, there's strategies that we can teach our athletes to help with those. So there are definitely these ideas of like, okay, in the luteal phase, we could do this, in the menstrual phase, we could do this, but since everybody's individual, we can still keep those buckets, but then we can pull from those buckets for each of those individuals based on their symptoms and needs that match kind of what the hormonal panels look like. So I think that was really interesting to think about it that way. I think you were in this one with me. I'm not sure, but the one where they tracked all of the female athletes' cycles, like hundreds and hundreds of female athletes, and they were looking at oh, wait, this is a different one. Sorry, guys. But there's two that are in my mind. But the one where it was talking about people who actually didn't have a cycle, but it seemed like they did. Do you remember that? And that was really interesting because it talks about how, unless you're actually tracking the hormones themselves, you may not know what's going on. And so that just really highlights how I think we need to like track our own symptoms and how we feel during the month.
Yeah. And so I think, teaching people how to do this, how to interpret the data, right? Yeah, I did find I don't know if you were talking about this one, but when they took all the data from people's Whoop bands,
Yeah.
so using some sort of wearable technology, right? And really they were just presenting this smattering of data they had. The researchers didn't quite know what they were going to do with it yet. They were just looking at trends, just seeing, hey, what happens if we take all this data and try to make some correlations. And I keep coming back when I'm sitting there, I kept coming back to this. I'm not on forums very often, but sometimes I pull up Facebook and like the first thing will be someone posting in some running group that I joined maybe years ago. But it was to the effect of this woman was saying like, oh guys, like don't worry, your HRV is going to vary throughout the cycle. So when your HRV dips during, ovulation, it doesn't mean you're overtraining. It just means that you're going through your cycle, basically. And I laugh because that still means there needs to be training adjustment.
Yes,
right?
exactly. That's why I was trying not to
ignore that data.
I think that's such a good point, Kacy. People do ignore that. They're like, oh, it's normal. Well, just because it's normal doesn't mean we don't need to make an adjustment. That's exactly right.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I just will never comment because it's just too deep of the weeds for me. But um anyway, yeah, I found that one interesting and like because I track it and I find it from a nerd perspective interesting. Like I do
Yeah.
um enjoy correlating everything and experimenting with myself. And I learn a lot from that in terms of how to help my patients and friends and stuff through these kind of things. But yeah, we have to pay attention.
We have to pay attention and then adjust it for what we need and then for athletes, it's really important for athletes to be able to talk to people, healthcare providers, coaches, whomever that actually understand that these fluctuations are happening and whatever symptoms they're having, they're real symptoms. And then we need to adjust training accordingly. And so, but also on the flip side, I do think there's this piece where people get hung up. They can easily get hung up on having their period while they're racing, knowing that just because you have it doesn't mean you can't race well. So I think it's there's so much to it. There's that psychological and that emotional piece that comes with it, but it's really complicated and really individualized.
Yeah, I think there is a big mental component, especially once I think females understand the impact that it can have, or they understand what the symptoms mean. I think one of the talks, I mean, it's very inconclusive, right? There's some studies that say that there are physiological inhibitors to performance during certain phases, and other studies that say there isn't, and so I think for me, I take this positively as like, okay, I might feel bad, but I can still perform as
Mhm.
well as I've trained to perform. I just
Yeah.
the extra mental layer, like, okay, I'm not going to feel great, but I can still do it, right?
Yes.
And I think there is a mental component that comes to that. And like, yeah, I look at the calendar and like Boston this year fell at a time I wasn't excited about, but it was like, all right, like
This is it.
I'm gonna take care of
Boston's
myself.
not changing for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna take care of myself. I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna add that extra piece of mental armor that I know I may not feel great, but I trained for this. I'm ready, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to this, it's really exciting that the research is being done. And it's really exciting that we're able to have these conversations. I think that it would be really beneficial in a conference like this to have a little bit more clinical perspective of how people are using this in their clinic and with their patients than we had. I thought the research piece was like really good, but I would have liked to see a little bit more clinical, mostly because I think that's where we see the multidisciplinary care, the interdisciplinary care happening in certain places. And I know we kind of talked about this. Nothing that we saw or heard there was groundbreaking for us because we practice this all the time and we read all the research and we implement it as much as possible. But it was really good to hear, to back up what we're already doing and also reframe some of the things that we were thinking and maybe change a few things, you know what I mean, based on something newer or the way somebody else explained it.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that because I think we've brought this up in different conversations over the past few weeks about the conference that yeah, nothing was, mind-blowing or earth-shattering about any of the information. And, I have to give ourselves a little pat on the back because it's like, yeah, of course you would do X, Y, Z, and you would bring in this dietitian and you would do the DEXA, blah, 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 And so the fact that that's just how we know to practice, and wasn't a surprise, I think was very validating as well.
Yeah, I really think it was. And that kind of leads us to that point that we did want to talk about a little bit was, this, how do we actually practice either multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary in real life? And we did our last podcast on how we do that with the elites. But that's a very different scenario than working with everyday people. And so how do we still do that in practice, even if we're in a place that maybe doesn't allow it? So it's a really interesting idea because I think it's something that we all know is gold standard, but how do we actually do it?
Yeah, and yeah, as our like off recording conversation went, like do our best with this. Maybe we're not perfect, but we do communicate with other practitioners. We refer out all the time, and we're connecting our patients, our athletes with the people that they need to be successful both in their sport and outside of their sport. And the reality is that not everyone has access to that or has the money, quite frankly, to pay for all of that care, right? And so whether you're listening and you're, no matter if you're a PT, an ATC, an MD, like you kind of have to meet your patient where they need to be met. So whether it is getting them to work one-on-one with another healthcare practitioner, or if it's something like, an app like, do you have an app, Kate? Can you remind me what it's called?
You mean the Run Source app?
Yeah, the Run Source app. Yeah. So giving them these tools, right? So giving them these resources, and I think more of making your patient understand that for us, from a PT perspective, and obviously everyone's coming at it from different angles, no matter what kind of practitioner you are, but like, okay, something is going on in your body and your musculoskeletal system, but we have mental health, we have nutrition, we have some physiology like iron or vitamin D or something else going on, right? And so being able to like again, it's about empowering your patient to want to explore all of these things instead of like, I'm gonna heal you kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, there's not one person that can do the job alone. And I think that's something that can be forgotten either by practitioners or by patients, right? There's not one answer. There's usually a whole bunch of different things that need to happen to line up. And you're right. It can be very expensive and time consuming. So it's really hard when you come to PT and we're like, oh, hey, you also need a dietitian. You also need to see a sports psychologist and. So we recognize that there are people that can do that. And we do that with a lot of our clients. But you're right. That's why we also created the Run Source app, is because we knew that financially people couldn't always do that. And from a time-wise, they couldn't. So it at least is another resource. And there's other resources out there too, not just that, but just trying to find a way for people to get the right information and work together as much as possible. And there is no perfect way, but as long as you're making strides towards building that team or helping support your athlete from as many ways as possible, and recognizing when there's a limit that you're at too. So that's the other piece, right? So recognizing that you can't be the one that heals everything. There are probably going to be other people you're going to need to ask. I still text and call various providers when I'm treating patients, and I've been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's about priorities too, like knowing what to address first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think something we do well, and something that, I think that we usually take that place as like directing the care, right? Like someone has to direct it. And it could be us, it could be the MD, but oftentimes it's us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what, like, someone has to be driving the ship, right? We can't be like going in circles. And so I think, if you're injured or dealing with a health problem, like making sure that you really trust whoever's driving your ship, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really, really important. And if you don't have someone driving and you just have a bunch of people, like a bunch of cooks in the kitchen, that's a problem too. I think, again, that's one thing that we do really well is when someone comes in and they're seeing a ton of people, the first question, like one of the questions on our intake form is, who's on your team? And then we're like, okay, can we talk to them? And if so, let's get everybody in line. And like I always call, either the coach or the chiropractor or the whoever they're working with. And I'm like, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is what I'm seeing. Is there anything I can do in my with what I'm doing that can support what you're doing? And we kind of work together that way and we build teams around our athletes, which is really, really cool, to the best of our ability and the best of their ability. And that's, I think, what we can do in terms of working in a multi or interdisciplinary team.
Yeah. I wish we had what?
I don't know.
Make me nervous.
Preparing myself. What's right?
No, I wish someone could have been a fly on the wall when we were just like in Ubers driving around Boston and like bouncing ideas off of each other, All of us PTs and Sarah Reiser and Kelsey. Which is
Yeah,
they must have thought we were insane.
oh, we were just nerdy, that's all. Oh, we need to talk about the most important thing that happened in Boston.
Oh, yeah, all of us. Um, so our entire PT staff and our associated medical team finally made the pilgrimage to Chinatown to try Kate's favorite soup,
The number 99.
number 99. And I don't know if I've ever seen Kate happier in her entire life.
No, I don't know that I have, but I was so happy you all got to. Okay, so everyone needs to understand that this soup, I was introduced to this soup when I was a PT aide. So that's like a million years ago. Okay, that's like before PT school, before I was introduced to by my friend Alexis, and we were roommates, and she was actually in PT school. And it was close to where she went. And it's this place called Faux Pasteur. It's in Chinatown. And I remember the first time I ever had it. It was raining out. I went inside. I had this soup. It had pineapple in it. It's just like the best pho you've ever had in your whole life. And then I could never stop eating it. And when I moved out of Boston, I used to go, every time I flew into Boston, I would get a cab before Uber and then eventually an Uber, and I would have it drop me off at the restaurant and I'd eat my soup and then my friends would pick me up. And then when I got pregnant, I tried to order the soup from Boston and had them send it to Atlanta and they refused. I almost broke up with them. But they refused and I cried. And so, anyway, yes, I have this love affair and I've been talking about it for over 6 years with Kacy. And so finally, I got to bring everybody to try it. So
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, folks, you like walk into this place and you're like, yeah, there's some family recipes in here. Like, it is like the real deal. They're so fast. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they
Like,
were fast.
you order your food and it's like there 2 minutes later, which is, I appreciate because I'm usually, if I'm sitting down at a restaurant, I'm usually like an hour past hangry.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, they were fast and like everyone, everyone got different things but we all got to try the soup. And it was, I don't think I've had anything quite like that before. It was really good. Don't get me wrong, it was really good. It was very different. It was different. Yeah.
Yeah. And then everyone made fun of Elizabeth for getting the same thing, for actually ordering it. They called her a suck up, which is not very nice. It was you and Kelsey. You both at the same time were like, suck up. Poor Elizabeth.
Poor Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth. I didn't mean to call you a suck up. I just thought it was really funny. That's all. It was for comedic value, nothing else.
That's right. All right, let's get back on track. But I mean, we could not have gone through this episode without talking about that. So I appreciate you indulging me.
Yeah, yeah. I love that story, and I love us sitting in an Uber for 15 minutes and then deciding walking would be faster. So we walked to the north.
Oh yeah, when we went to the North End, there was so much traffic when we were going for dinner. We got in the Uber and it went like 10 feet in 20 minutes, and we're like, we've got to get out of here. We're going to be late for our reservation. So we all walked. That was good. It was good to walk before and after dinner.
Yeah, the Uber driver was like, "No, too far." We're like, "You don't know us."
You don't know who we are. We can definitely go. We were like, how long is it? He's like, a mile. We're like, a mile? That's easy.
Piece of cake.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of draw it back to the conference here because we do want to get through I think some of the other things worth talking about. Or did you go to the pregnancy and postpartum or the postpartum lecture? I can't remember. Yeah, I thought you were there. I don't remember. It's
I was
all
like
blur.
sitting on the floor. I got up there a little late because it was like in Timbuktu. It was like one of the conference rooms that was like so far from everything else. So I camped out on the floor for that one.
I thought that was a good one. Some of our colleagues and people that we know and have been on podcasts with or talked to or kind of collaborated with before were giving a few of the talks, which was really nice. And I thought, again, what was really interesting that came out of that kind of update on pregnancy and postpartum is it really hasn't changed all that much. But they were talking more about, again, how everything has to be individualized. So we can't really treat the elite athletes the same that we treat the everyday athletes because their bodies during training, during pregnancy are different. During training before are different and after are different. And the demands on their bodies are different in terms of what they're taking their body through, which we've known, we know that, but there wasn't really research that said that. And now it's a little bit more specific. So I don't think there was a huge update when it came to postpartum, return to run postpartum, but it was a really good outline of how it really needs to be looked at and how we need to take people through and how it has to be individualized.
Yeah, I think my big takeaway from that one was like you have to consider the patient's baseline, right? And so for elites, like baseline is 100 plus miles a week, 2 workouts a week, a long run. And sure, maybe their pregnancy training will look a little bit different, but they don't need to follow, certain guidelines that maybe are in place for other folks who have a lower baseline, right? Which I think is more like the common, person, I guess. So just like not having this fear around intense exercise, if intense exercise is what that mom is used to doing.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. And it was really interesting to kind of look at it and think about our athletes and think about how some of our athletes are really kind of sitting on the edge of that research, right? So it's like we've been treating these athletes. These athletes have been, running and racing during pregnancy and coming back postpartum, and there was no research to support anything, whether they were doing it or not. And now the research is slowly catching up with what's actually happening in practice. And so looking at it from that perspective and seeing like how all these female athletes are pioneers really in this space, and we're just figuring out how to move with them. How do we actually support them in what they're already doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was one of the things they were like, oh, in the old, like, not even the old days. I mean, we're talking about the very recent, is like the advice would be, don't run, you'll shake the baby.
Oh God. Yeah. That's a whole
What?
nother discussion.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The fact that people actually thought that just kills me. But yes, exactly. So these women are definitely pioneers, and we've just got to keep up with them and find our ways to support them, because it is crazy what's still talked about on, Facebook pages, Reddit, like all these places. What advice women are getting is not correct. Again, we are lucky because we've been giving and been in this research and been using it in practice for so long. But the truth is it isn't widespread. And that's why conferences like these are really important, and discussions like these are really important.
Yeah. I'm also frustrated like by how long it's taken for like referral to pelvic floor PT postpartum has taken to get, I don't even want to call it mainstream, but like where it could be standard care. Because so many people don't know it exists. And I've been really lucky in the past year or so where I've had a couple of friends who have become pregnant here in the Atlanta area, and I've been able to advise them like, hey, you should connect with one, pre-baby, and if you have any issues, you can go and see them, and then definitely at this, timeline postpartum, and it just they do incredible work, and I just wish it was a little like it's getting more common, but it needs to be even more common.
Yeah, I agree. That has to be part of our healthcare system, that's part of the pregnancy postpartum care. It needs to be made part of it. And it's one of those things, because it's women, it wasn't researched, so it wasn't talked about, so people didn't know it was necessary. And there are a lot of crazy things that have happened, and women have been told over so long. We just need to continue to bust those myths and help people get to the right place. And I do think, again, like you said, and even in our practice, we always tell our athletes when they get pregnant, make sure you connect with a pelvic health therapist. Don't wait. And let's think about the things that you can be doing to stay active during pregnancy, as active as you want to be. You don't have to push yourself farther than you want to, but certainly what can we do to support you during this period of time? And now, when we know that you're about to have a baby, what's the plan on the other end? Making sure that they know there's a plan, because athletes need a plan. We want a plan. like, especially, I loved marathon training because I knew what I was doing for 3 to 6 months every day. That was such an appealing thing. And so going through pregnancy is no different. Like, let's have a plan around that, and let's have a plan around postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, someone has to support the mom in that plan, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
a gynecologist or PT, public health PT, whoever it might be, just to provide like that that information for them. So
Yep. And then the other exciting thing was that we talked a lot about perimenopause and menopause, or the menopause transition, during the conference. And I'll tell you that even like 3 or 4 years ago, it was not being talked about hardly at all. Pregnancy and postpartum was being talked about. Pelvic health was being talked about. The periods and cycles were being talked about, but menopause, perimenopause, and the menopause transition was not really that big of a topic until really recently. So that was a lot of fun to be able to talk about that and listen to the research that's happening. And unfortunately, I'm relating to some of the things that are coming out, and I could laugh about it.
yeah, sitting next to you during that talk was hilarious. You were just like, yes, yes. Oh, that's me. The whole talk.
I just felt really seen when they were talking about the things about like being hot and really grumpy. Like, it's just true. Like, I'm just don't, I have to be careful about what I say. I've always had to be careful about what I say, to be honest, like always. But now I have to like really work hard for that extra filter, because I just say things and then later I'm like, wow. It reminds me of when I was pregnant and I would say things and I felt like I was watching myself say things and I couldn't stop it from happening. But when you're pregnant, everyone, says, oh, she said that because she's pregnant. It's her hormones. And that's okay. She looks so cute because she's pregnant. Well, now in perimenopause and menopause transition, whatever you want to say, when you're saying things like that, people do not think it's cute.
Not cute.
It is real, ladies. If you are younger and you're not, I mean, and I'm just at the start. I'll be honest, all my friends are talking about this 6 months ago and I was laughing. And now it is real.
Who's laughing now? No, I'm just kidding.
Nobody's laughing now.
Nobody's laughing now.
You're laughing.
I'm laughing for now. No, because admittedly, I don't know much. I mean, we all don't know. There isn't that much research on it, right? So I really enjoyed learning about it. And, me, I'd make jokes about everything. So I'm like, well, at least in puberty, you get to watch a video about your changing body, but like no one tells you what to do when you are entering menopause.
No, well, luckily there's a lot of resources now, like for
Now.
athletes. Yeah, now for athletes. But there's this one slide that really sticks out for me, that I was like, oh, yes. It was a graph of, or it was like a chart of like what happens, like your life, with your hormones, and how like every cycle they're like really predictable, and like this is what happens during each phase of your cycle. It's this beautiful graph that I always use in my lectures, and then next to it, like right next to it, was this graph of what your hormones look like in perimenopause and menopause. It was like literally like up and down and all crazy and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at that and I was like, wow, that really mimics my emotions right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I don't know, how many people like I really appreciated that frame of it because it's like, okay, before puberty, you have no fluctuation in your hormones, and then you have a little bit of a crazy period in puberty because your body is getting into its cycle. Then we're really cyclical, hopefully, if we're healthy for a long time. And then we go back to haywire again, right? Before everything levels off again. And so it was a visual representation of how hormones are queen when it comes to emotions.
That's right. Emotions and like body functions too. Like we think about it, like we're talking about things that are impacted during this period is We have to think about muscles and bones. So like bone density and how keeping our muscles strong. That was a really big topic of discussion, was keeping our bones strong, keeping our muscles strong, making sure we're getting enough protein, making sure that the weighted vest came up. And it was funny because some people really hate the weighted vest, some practitioners, and other people really like it. But the person that was speaking was like, I don't hate the weighted vest. It does help. And then, it also is talking about hydration, like hyperhydration for athletes is really important, especially during this phase, because we have our core body temperature changes and the way we regulate heat changes. So all of these topics were discussed, and it was great.
Yeah, yeah. I love the person who asked that question about the weighted vest. She was like, I just need to know about the weighted vest. And this presenter was like, what do you want to know about the weighted vest? She wasn't 100%, I think, plugged into how many groups are out there just walking along in their weighted vest. But again, I don't hate it either. I think the research is a little bit mixed with it, but people are trying to do things to take care of their bones, and I am never going to hate on that.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So do what you can to help slow down that, or to help protect our bones, protect our muscles, and make you feel good. And we know that exercise has such a positive impact on the brain. And we also know, what I appreciate about this conference and some of the topics, is that we know that athletes respond differently than sedentary people when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. And so knowing what to do as an athlete is very different, and it's different recommendations, everything from what to eat, how to drink, or what to drink, to like how to protect our body. Those are different recommendations if you're active and you're an athlete than it is if you're not.
Yeah, because we have this whole other metric to look at, right? We have our physical performance and training. So like if you're not an athlete and you're not stressing your body, you're going to notice obviously all these other things in your everyday life, but you're not going to have this separate metric of your performance that is either plateauing or not responding the way it used to. And so it becomes this whole other almost world that I think athletes have to manage that, non-athletes perhaps don't have to manage.
Yeah, that's right. So all in all, I think that the conference, like, they did a good job. There were a lot of really good topics. Again, nothing was earth-shattering, but it was really good to be in that room and that energy and so many people looking to help female athletes. The one thing I would say is I wish that there had been more men in the room. Like, I really hope. It would be really interesting to think about why there weren't so many male providers and coaches. I mean, maybe it's intimidating. Maybe they don't know it's for them because it says female athlete conference on it. But I would have loved to see more male providers and coaches there to see how they support their athletes. More than 50% of athletes are women, and they're often coached by men and taken care of by male providers. So I do think this is kind of like my call to action. So if there are male providers on here and coaches, like, this is my call to action. Sign up in 2 years, go to this, learn about this, so that you can help your female athletes.
Yeah, as much as I love and cherish that perhaps we're scaring away the men, we need the men to be learning about these things too. Because yeah, most, or not most, but a lot of providers, a lot of coaches are men. And it's only going to make your job coaching those athletes easier to understand them better.
Maybe we should get Tommy to go with us in 2 years.
Oh, that would be a treat.
That would be a treat.
That would be a treat.
We would have a lot of fun. And the thing is, he is such a great coach, and he really does want to listen. Like, he sat down with me to talk about menstrual cycles and the girls team this year, and he was all in. He was listening. He was really wanting to see what he could do to help his athletes. And I think he would benefit from a conference like that. In fact, I'm going to ask him to come with us.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He's coming next time.
He doesn't know yet.
He doesn't know yet.
And I don't know if he listens to this, so he might not know until we approach him. If he listens to this, he gets the heads up.
Yeah. Just in 2 years.
That's right. Anything else you feel like we need to talk about in terms of the conference and, female athlete research or what's going on or any updates?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered the entire lifespan. I'm excited for where we're headed, and we're learning so much more, I think, about how to take care of ourselves and how we're different, obviously. And yeah, I just feel really excited to help you know, all ages who come into our clinic, because I think that it's only going to be better and better for aging women as time passes now that we have research.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, that's great. Well, thank you everyone for coming and listening to this podcast today. And, obviously, if you ever have questions, reach out to us. Like we said, we're trying to just share with you the knowledge that we have about all things running and athletes. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. We'll catch you later.
Thank you so much for listening today. We are so happy that you're here. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend. Even better, share it on social media, because sharing is caring. And the more people we can reach, the better.
Another way you can help us out is by leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. So give us those 5 stars and tell us how awesome we are. Really, we love to hear how awesome we are. To support our work financially, you can also join our Patreon squad at patreon.com/morethanmiles, where for a few dollars a month, you can help us keep the show going and growing.
This season is sponsored by Fast Bananas. Why buy multiple subscriptions made for everyone when you can have one specifically crafted for runners? Fast Bananas has online yoga classes, strength training programs, meditations, recipes, communities to ask questions, and so much more. Check out Fast Bananas at fastbananas.com or follow them on Instagram at fastbananasrun.
Don't forget that training is so much more than miles.